Hello and welcome to the latest edition of She the People Women Writers Fest. In this edition, we welcome Sonal Kellogg and Charukesi Ramadurai, who will lead us in exploring compelling themes as first-hand witnesses to the world of storytelling through travel. Sonal is a journalist with over 3 decades of experience, dedicated to spotlighting news from a minority perspective in India. She has traveled extensively across the nation to bring truth to power, focusing on the untold stories of marginalized women. Additionally, she is a passionate food enthusiast and eagerly explores local cuisines during her travels. Charukesi is an independent journalist who writes travel and lifestyle stories for a variety of prestigious publications worldwide. Her work has appeared in renowned outlets such as the New York Times, National Geographic, BBC Travel, to name a few. With visits to 68 countries across 6 continents, she now has her eyes set on Antarctica. Welcome, both of you.
Thank you.
So, I'll quickly speak about storytelling through travel, right? There's something about stories that emerge from a travel experience. Because traveling not only introduces you to new places, it compels you to transcend your own lived experiences and pursue something greater than our everyday life, right? And if you're fortunate and willing, you carry these essences of travels with you. And storytelling has a major role to play in helping us preserve these experiences, ensuring that they do not fade into oblivion. So I'll start from a basic question. How has traveling impacted your life? And how did you factor in journalism and storytelling through your experiences? Sonal, I'll start with you.
Okay, right. So I've traveled to a lot of remote places intentionally so that I can tell the stories which are not so popularly told and kind of give voice to tribals, marginalized people from the rural areas. So it's very interesting that when you kind of go to these places, you have to see it for what it is. I've also covered a lot of riots and conflicts. And unless you go to some place, you will not know what's the situation. Same for covering elections or covering, I've covered the earthquake in Gujarat. So all these places, until you go there, you kind of get the actual feel of what the situation is like in any place. So it's always very nice to be able to go to places. This remote journalism doesn't kind of work. Though, of course, there is this whole thing about parachute journalism, which is like you just kind of land up somewhere and report from what you see. But so as compared to somebody who's a local person there and the person reporting their own stories. So that, of course, is the best scenario when you can report your own stories from your own locations. But if that is not a possibility and not everyone is able to do that, then the best other thing is going to a place and then trying to understand. Of course, the problem with most of us who go to different places is that we have paucity of time. We don't really have, like, we can't happily relax and understand the culture and this and that. But now that I'm an independent journalist, I have got more time at my disposition. It's not like I'm going to have to rush and be there by evening to report on a story. So there I have little more time, but it still is not enough time to understand a culture which is very alien to you. So yes, it's very good to do stories from different places, but I really feel that it's very important to go to places and then do stories from there, because only then can you actually see what's happening. When it comes to video journalism or using videos, then you can even show what's actually happening, the situation, or if it's a good, happy story, then that. But when you interact with people, when you interact with locations, you really get to see how things are. And that is what you want to show your audience, viewers, readers, whatever.
Yeah, quite interesting. I mean, talking about going to places, Charu, we would like to ask you, you've been to 68 countries. So how did it all begin for you?
It began by accident. I have to say it's just something that I stumbled into, travel writing. I used to be a corporate slave, and in the course of my corporate life, I did travel a lot, and I was one of the old school bloggers. I think I started blogging in 2003, and just sharing those stories was for me a way of kind of making sense of what I saw and what I experienced wherever I went. So, which is how it started really. The earlier question that you asked me about how storytelling when it comes to travel, stories are a way to make sense of the place and also share that delight with other people. So yeah, it started quite as like a happy accident, and then over time it came to be what I did for a living. Yeah, it's really it's a crucial part of my life. And again, to go back to your early thing of how it has changed my life,
Yeah.
one of the biggest changes that I see is the way travel shatters my preconceptions every single time. I go to a place expecting to see something, expecting people to be a certain way, I expecting just the experience to be a certain way. And every time it gets broken. And that's a great feeling, actually, because it's also taught me that the politics of a place, what you read in the newspapers about what a place is not reflective of its people. Even in the most hostile, in the most dire situations, the kindness of people, the hospitality, the generosity of people, that has never failed to surprise me and touch me. So, yeah, that is something that travel has taught me, to never take anything, any place for granted.
That's lovely. And extending that question, how do you think travel writing has changed, rather evolved in this past decade?
Okay, again, I'm from an old school, and I still believe in kind of reporting and talking to people and descriptive narrative writing. So travel writing has either become your video blogging, social media led, or if it comes to journalism, it's become this very, tell me 10 things that I can do in a place, or what are the top 7 restaurants I should eat at, which is nice, but it's just one aspect of travel. When I really long for the days of these old rambling narrative style travel thing of where you meet somebody at a shop and then there are like 2 paragraphs about it, and it's just so immersive and descriptive, and that is what has often made me want to go to a place, rather than saying, oh, it has 7 top Michelin star restaurants and I should go. Like, okay, but I can find that out by myself. I don't need a travel writer to tell me that. So yeah, the 2 big things are social media has completely changed the way
Yeah.
we consume any information, and definitely when it comes to travel, and everything needs to be either visual or broken down into really simple,
Yeah.
monos, like few syllables, few words kind of things to help people plan. It's a very old school way of thinking, but that's what I.
Yeah. Coming to social media as well, I think the audiences are now, I mean, we're moving towards consuming more raw content and authenticity as well. At least some are. And we're, genuinely drawn to depictions of narratives rather than polished versions that we were earlier exposed to as well. So, I mean, obviously, there's a flip side to every coin. So I would want to ask Sonal, how do you look at writing from the lens of history and heritage? Uh, do you think it's still authentic, or do you think that there are different perspectives to it? So what are your thoughts on this?
Sorry. On history,
Yeah.
are you asking how? Okay. So, like Charu here, I also agree in the old form of journalism, the narrative form, going back to, because that is when you will be able to tell the story. I understand this 1 minute clip, like in 1 minute you want to tell something, and I've done that also. Talk about some place I've seen just in that 1 minute. But coming back to talking about our heritage or the history of, say, India, a lot of it at present is being questioned. So we are going back to everything is, this was a narrative written by this one. Now this never got reported, or that did not get reported, or this is not the real. So everything is there right now in a very, very dynamic situation. It's changing. And again, we are going to have to figure out what is the narrative people want to promote. And everyone is promoting their own view of things. So what the Britishers, no, this was written by the Britishers, so maybe that's not right. And this is now what never got reported. And so there are like layers of it. And that I think I would leave the historians to kind of figure it out.
Charu, you've covered so many countries. So what do you like? What's a food tradition that has caught your attention the most? And which country? I'm sure you have many experiences, but something that stood out for you.
Yes, definitely. So I think as far as food traditions go, there is nothing really to beat this part of Asia, whether it's South Asia and a bit of Southeast Asia, because here food is all about hospitality. It's the tradition of sharing, which I find incredible, which I don't see really anywhere in the world. I mean, you could land up, and Sonal probably would have experience of this, that you could land up at a stranger's, front of a stranger's home, and they will invite you in, and they will give you whatever has been cooking in their kitchen. And it's a way. It's not just hospitality, but it's just their way of sharing their culture and sharing, whatever little fortune that they have in the form of what's in the kitchen. And this I've seen across this region, in definitely South Asia, lots of parts of Southeast Asia, and that never fails to surprise me. And it's often with the people who have the least who kind of give you the most. And that's true with food sharing as well. And I find that quite incredible.
I want to touch upon another topic, which is solo traveling. So there's been a huge surge in solo traveling among women in the past decade, and it's because of a number of reasons. Okay, so Charu, you've traveled to so many countries. I want to ask you about your initial experience as a solo traveler, and how does safety fit into all this now?
So I think the biggest barrier for a lot of women wanting to travel solo is this thing of safety.
Yeah.
While I understand that it is a concern, it's not that big a concern as we think it is, as we make it out to be in our minds. I think it's more to do with the unknown, and more often than not, people are way nicer, way more helpful and kind than we give them credit for. Yes, initially I did have that too. But then I discovered that as long as there are some basic rules that you follow, which is common sense, really. Just keep your head down, make plans for the day that you arrive. Don't just arrive in a new place and say, start exploring. Have a booking, preferably, have somebody to pick you up, like a cab, or have a local SIM card. Very, very basic things, although they seem very basic. They make a lot of difference. Having a place to go to as soon as you land in a new city makes a lot of difference. Just keep your head down. Don't go to bars and leave your drink unattended. Don't give out the name of the hotel where you're staying at. Very simple things like that. There is no reason to be. I feel there is no reason to be concerned about safety. In a lot of places, I mean, I've traveled alone in Mexico and Peru and Cuba and all kinds of places. And I found that more often than not, people go out of their way to be friendly to you. And yeah, a little bit of friendliness goes a long way. I've had people say, oh, you should eat at that place. And I've had people who have come with me to show me directions, either because, they can't, they don't speak the language, or they're unable to explain, or they just think they shouldn't let me go by myself, and leave their shop unattended and come all the way and lead me to where I want to go. So I think as long as you have a few basic commonsensical things in place, solo travel is something that I strongly think every woman should experience at least.
Yeah.
Well, I want to say once a year, but yeah, once in a lifetime, definitely.
Yeah.
It really changes the way you think about yourself as well.
Yeah. I'm sure it's very freeing also.
It is.
You
It
know.
is.
Sonal, you've been traveling remote, and I'm sure it's not easy, especially in India. So, what are the concerns, or rather the challenges that you face, especially in terms of logistics? Because I've read the stories that you had covered, and and I'm sure there are a lot of challenges in terms of navigating those as a woman, as a journalist. So, tell me something about your experiences there.
If the more, I mean, one of the big things in India when you're going to remote areas is finding a good hotel to stay. So that becomes, and then sometimes I'm on the road, especially when I was doing election coverage, I would just keep going from one village to the other. Then I would like hope somewhere we'll find a decent restaurant. If I'm not planned, like Charu said, yeah, when I'm a planned this thing, we have a place that this is where we're going to stay. This is a big city. We are going to stay in, say, Dahod, but we are going to be traveling to villages nearby. So we do that, but then sometimes you'll be late somewhere, or you won't be able to make it somewhere for whatever reason. Either you have been shooting too late and then you got late, or you might have a puncture in your car and then it'll just get delayed and there won't be a spare, or you'll have a spare. Definitely, you can't go without a spare, but you might take more time and you get stuck somewhere. Then it becomes a big problem. One of the big issues I've been having, even with a lot of plan, is finding a toilet. I mean, just a toilet in the tribal areas I was going. There was no toilet only. Forget about a Western or an Indian toilet, just no toilet. And then they said, oh, we just go out. I'm like, oh my God. So, that becomes such an issue. You have to then go to highways, joints, dhabas, which are bigger ones, so that they will have a toilet of some kind. So that becomes a big concern. And of course, other safety plans, you have to choose. It becomes more expensive. I've noticed that when I'm traveling, it's more expensive because I am looking for a good hotel to stay in. So then I have to pay more as compared to, I guess, if the guy, when my camera was saying, oh, hum yahi rahe, we would have stayed just here, because for them, they can afford staying in a place where they're not so worried about the security, but I'm worried. And so I have to then book a place which is better, which is more known, which is there on the map somewhere. And if not starred restaurant, hotels, but at least it is a much better place with security in a not a very remote somewhere place. So those are concerns which I'm facing all the time. But most of the time, finding a proper toilet is one big concern, which I keep on facing. And it's really scares me that sometimes I just get an infection. I'm not even able to go. That is a big problem, which I'm sure that if you're going to remote places is going to be an issue. So, yeah, I don't know what to do with that at present, especially in very, very remote places. It's a concern. Still, though the government, I've been going to places where the government has been providing them, money to construct toilets, yet it's not that it's there everywhere. That becomes a big issue, especially in tribal areas. I found that was quite an issue.
Charu, we discussed about, like you told me about how travel writing has evolved or changed from how when you started. Coming to the attention span of people, we were discussing about 10 things, 3 things, and everything, and how we have to simplify everything now because we are so hooked on to 1 minute reels. I mean, I won't even say 1 minute, it's like a 30-second reel and you just scroll up. So a lot of doom scrolling happening, a lot of shorts, YouTube shorts happening. Among all of this, do you think that storytelling, especially about like Sonal spoke about, losing a sense of the real history and the real heritage because of a lot of opinions floating around? Do you think because of the decreasing attention span, we're also losing a sense in the kind of storytelling that should be present currently to actually tell authentic stories?
Uh, yes, the larger trend definitely is towards these attention grabbing reels. And a lot of times, stuff which is not true, but it just sounds sensational.
Yeah.
I recently called out somebody on Instagram because of the way they had spoken about how an entire country was unsafe because of something that happened to them. And my take was, this is why this you should never go to this country. Something, it's one of those attention grabbing things.
Yeah.
And that was about Sri Lanka, which in my opinion is one of the sweetest, safest countries ever. And that is an incident that had nothing to do with the country. It's just an interpersonal, an interaction, and it could have happened to anybody, anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, it's not just about attention grabbing. It kind of borders on irresponsible and unethical.
Yeah.
Having said that, I also see a lot of storytellers who make the effort to kind of go behind the obvious, talk about, say, volunteering, talk about ethical ways of traveling, how about giving back to communities, and so on. I think there is a lot of good content out there. So it's eventually, it's also about who you want to follow. Unfortunately, they're not always the most popular ones because they don't grab it. I mean, it's saying this is so unsafe, I almost got killed there is much more sensational and attention grabbing than saying, hey, you know what, I had a great time, guys, you all should go there.
Yeah.
So it's I think the responsibility also lies with you as the audience to figure out who is credible, who is responsible, and follow that rather than just hanging on to everything everyone says.
Yeah. Sonal, what are your
I'd
thoughts
like
on
to
this?
say something. Could I say? Uh, telling stories is storytelling you're always coming up with. Is I'd gone to Nandurbar in Maharashtra, which is a
Okay.
tribal area, to do an election story. But while we were there, it was this last year. So while it was there, it was wedding time. So they were having weddings everywhere. So just on a, like a side thing, we shot the wedding and, their dances and all that. And you won't believe that that's my highest viewed video. People were so happy that their culture was, this is the first time you're showing a tribal wedding and our weddings are not shown and this is how the culture. And people corrected me. No, we do it like this and we do it and here we do it like that. And when their own personal traditions, we worship this tree or we do that. And they were so happy. We were like, oh, taken aback. I'm saying, I did so many stories about the actual schemes, whether the government schemes are reaching them, not reaching them, what are their problems. But this wedding thing was what really
Yeah.
seemed to be something that attracted them so much. And then I realized how much people are, how much they love their own culture and how much they love their own traditions. So yeah, I thought I'd just put that out there. So telling stories about people and their culture and their heritage and their food, all that really is good for us also to know and for them also to be able to showcase their stories.
Charu, would you share with us some of the places that you've absolutely loved documenting?
Um, okay, I'll start with India. My
Yeah.
heart is in Ladakh. I've been there 4 times. I've been in different seasons. The latest was in December. I went last December. I stayed in Hemis National Park and I went looking for the snow leopard. It was one of the most kind of transcendental experiences. I don't know if that's the right word, but yeah, it was, freezing and you're up at 5 in the morning and you're getting dressed in the dark and you're just going out following the trackers. And the trackers are people who know the land, the landscape. They know every ridge, every peak, and in that kind of terrain, if a snow leopard comes and stands in front of you, you will not be able to spot it because it's white and brown, and the snow leopard is white and brown. But they just say, "Wahan pe kaan hila." I'm like, "Kahan pe?" And that's 2 hills away. Kaan hila. What do you? So it's kind of incredible. I mean, seeing the snow leopard was incredible, but seeing the way these people, and just not just spotting it and showing it to tourists, but also telling villages about why it's important to take part in conservation and what wildlife conservation means and what responsible tourism means and so on. Ladakh is one land that I will never get tired of documenting. I've written like a dozen stories. I've been 4 times and I will keep going back as often as I can, as many times as I can. So yes, that. Also, I've been living in Malaysia for the last few years, and I've loved reporting on because you don't see many stories from Malaysia, either travel or and gentle people, and there is so much of work happening again in conservation and wildlife and just eco-friendly practices. I have loved being able to document and showcase a bit of Malaysia to the world. That's been a thing. And yeah, as I said, say traveling in Cuba was a great experience, and I didn't know what to expect. So that's been a place that I've loved writing about. Last year, I went and spent a couple of weeks in Mongolia, and I stayed at this remote area in the west. I stayed with eagle hunters family, so by tradition they are people who live off their livestock, and they hunt with eagles. It's a Kazakh tradition. So I stayed with that family, and we had not a single word in common, like not even like a hello. They didn't know even that, but it was just lovely. There was no internet signal, there was no phone signal, and we were in the middle of nowhere. And I had an English speaking guide who said, "Oh, that way that's China, that way that's Russia," and it just felt incredible, surrounded by mountains and staying in the middle of nowhere. And just they would just smile at me anytime they saw me. They would just smile, and you knew that you were kind of welcome and safe, and it's a place that you had there was no problem in you being there. So yeah, I've loved writing about that too. Yeah, these are a few highlight, standout experiences.
Coming to the last and I think a very important leg of the conversation, which is responsible tourism, right? Sustainability. So, Sonal, you've traveled to a lot of remote places, and you must have seen how the locals get impacted by a lot of tourists as well. Like I belong to the hills of Uttarakhand. Okay, so I belong to the Kumaon region, and I see that like earlier we had these seasons called like the summer season in June, or the Christmas season from December to February. Okay, now every weekend is a season there. So while the tourism has like surged like how, and it is of course good for the economy, I do not see the locals celebrating that, and that's because they're getting impacted by it, because travelers are not responsible, the authorities are not responsible with how they're treating the locals, and in the end the locals, especially women, they get impacted by it a lot, and I've seen it firsthand. So I want Sonal, I want you to comment on it a little bit. Like, are we choosing the wrong sort of development and tourism promotions?
Yeah, definitely. We need to regulate our development and the tourism. I'm also like you, by the way, from Uttarakhand. My dad's from Uttarakhand. So this time we were there in May, and then early June. And I was devastated by the fact that the government is building this 4-lane highway or whatever from Pauri to Kedarnath. So otherwise they go from Rishikesh, but now they are building this, and they have cut so many trees, and because they are broadening the the mountain roads, the Himalaya mountain roads. So there's so much of cutting of these trees, and I'm like, oh my God, when will they ever be able to bring this kind of, and these many trees are getting lost. They're not going to be able to just plant so many trees and the roads being. But then I'm also seeing the very good thing, which I've seen. Some of these content creators are creating content from their own regions, telling how their dadis are cooking something, or some Pahadi culture, and I see that and I'm like, okay, that also there. So even they're picking up on technology and using it to showcase their food, their cuisine, and also their heritage and customs. So that is also happening, but also they're losing. They're losing their environment, their trees, their jharnas, and these streams and stuff like that. So I think the pros and cons. Personally, I felt there's so much of felling of trees just to make a broader highway so that more people can go was something which even a lot of locals were, this is not how they're supposed to go. They were supposed to really trek, and it was supposed to be a difficult journey. It's not like you just go around, say, and then you land up there without any difficulty. And this is not how it's supposed to be. And maybe that the government could kind of think of regulating, because in Uttarakhand, we've already seen the effect of land, sinking of land, and there's a lot of other effects, which is again there in the Northeast also. This is happening, and we really need to look at, yes. So we need to look at that, and we shouldn't be destroying our heritage and our, these natural resources just to promote tourism. So I hope we will speak enough about it, write enough about it, and maybe the government also look into it. It's not just about development.
Charu, with you seeing so many places and coming across different cultures, what do you have to say about tourism regulation and mitigation?
It is very critical right now, because a lot of the time the benefits of tourism don't really go down to the people or the communities who live there. So, while people may think, hey, I'm able to sell my local products at a higher price, or charge tourists more, it's a kind of short-term way of looking at things, because in the long term, what we are seeing across the world is people are getting priced out of the housing market, for instance, because homes are being converted into Airbnbs. So residents are not able to rent homes. They're being priced out of every tourist service, because there is someone who comes from outside and is able to provide that at a lower cost. So unless the tourist money goes down completely to the community and to the people, it makes no sense to have more and more people. And we are seeing these protests everywhere in Barcelona and in Paris and in Venice, and even Jeff Bezos had to change his plans with all that money and with all that influence. He still had to do that, because Venice just cannot take that kind of pressure any longer. So, and I see that in Ladakh, again, coming back to this little piece of my heart. I see this time when I was there in December, I saw this hotel in Leh, which had marble in the facade, and that is Leh. I have never seen that. I mean, when I went there for the first time 15 years ago, just it's just one movie that's done that to Ladakh, and it's heartbreaking to see that. So there is construction, there is, like from dry pit toilets, now people want flush toilets, and there is no scope for that to go. It's an ecological disaster waiting to happen there, and that's happening across the world. So definitely there's a need for regulation on the part of the tourism authorities. And a lot of, I think, self-regulation on the part of people in the tourism business as well. Don't promote just the known places. Why not seek out an alternative? Why not? To be honest, I have been to many of these so-called checklist places myself. But what I do is to go in a shoulder season, in an off-season time. So at least the pressure of crowds and just the people it's not there on the land and the community. So there are various ways to overcome this. It doesn't mean boycott a destination, or it doesn't mean stop going there or stop allowing people to come. Just manage it more wisely, more responsibly.
I agree. We've come to the end of the conversation. It was lovely having both of you. I had a great time talking to you and discussing this. And so thank you so much for joining She the People for this.
Thank you. Thanks, Bhav.
Thank you. I'll see you.